Can anybody read what's in diagonal?
I can't
Okay.
see anything.
You can't see anything? Well, how about somebody who can see some of it? And then we'll read it, and when we read it, you'll be able to hear it and then see it. That's how it works. The body and the soul are so amazing. We can construct in many different ways. Can anybody give that an opportunity? Can anybody read that diagonal?
I'll try.
Okay,
Are you ready?
Okay,
are you ready to remember and reconstruct your reality?
Yeah. So are you ready to remember and reconstruct your reality? Are you?
And Om Shanti.
Shanti. So there's two aspects here that we're engaging. One is remembering that thing that we know and have felt and experienced all the time, but we can't put our finger on it, and society as a whole hasn't yet been able to identify sometimes and call it and see it for its form and see it for its capacity. Okay, and then the other is reconstruct. So one is remembering and then reconstructing. And what are we reconstructing? Based on what we will remember, we will reconstruct our relationships with these aspects of living. Religion, spirituality, education, all of those things, they will go into a reconstruction phase. We will reconstruct how we relate to these aspects of our daily lives, our practical moments. Is there any question? Would anybody else like to also share the word that might pop out in terms of their relationship, their present relationship with it? Something that they feel might be difficult to let go? Anyone else?
What is?
What is?
Worries about kids and grandkids.
Okay, worries. Yeah, so there we have a relationship where we don't understand what's actually occurring from one body to the next because we're playing roles with one another, right? So I am worried about my grandkids and probably also your kids, right? Not just your grandkids. But
yeah, so, given the situation right now.
Yeah, so what happens is because we are not clear, we're not remembering who we actually are, we are identifying with our bodies. And because the body has a beginning and then a process of living and then an end to it, but we forget the other aspect of the relationship, and we'll go into the mechanics of that. We forget that we're eternal beings and that this is just a tiny, tiny moment in what we call infinity, right?
Right.
So we're going to look at what that means. And I know that a lot of fear is debilitating. So it's a really important thing for us to understand. If fear is actively in our minds, actively in our inner system, it begins to break down our capacity to clearly see and clearly function. And also, it has, if it stays there for a long period of time, it actually starts to create dysfunction in the immune system, in the cardiovascular system, in the aging process, in the gastrointestinal. So it actually, if you stay with ideas and feelings and doings that are propelled by fear, what's going to happen is that your body is actually going to wear down. It's going to be depleted because we need to energize the body. So food is not enough to just remain healthy. We must also have a relationship with the thoughts. So we're going to, anybody else wants to add their relationship before we go to the next? Anyone? Okay. And did everybody understand the ideas that were communicated?
Yes.
Okay. So the worries, the fear, it actually comes from a body-centric identity. So I identify with my body, and I identify with the temporal aspects of my body. So my body's temporary, and because it has a certain amount of time, I am focused on the amount of time that I might have. So of course, time becomes important. Also, when you are focusing on body-centric, when it's about body-centric, most of the time when you're experiencing fear, worries, and lack of energy is because you are focusing on one of, I am fearful because I fear that I may not have. So fear for my future. What am I going to do for work? How am I going to survive? So because our thoughts are so important in the way we actually energize our system and keep the body healthy, but also how we feed the soul, when we focus only on survival and focus only on the body, we are body conscious. So the aspects of body conscious is I need, I will take, because it's trying to survive, right? It doesn't feel like it has enough. So the preservation of the body is at center of its survival. The consciousness is just trying to make sure that the body survives, that the body remains healthy. So beliefs determine our thoughts, feelings, and actions. Can anybody give me an example of a belief? I'll give you an example. It's right underneath. Life is a competition for survival driven by a variety of value systems. So I am living to survive, so I am competing against everything and everything around me in order to make sure that that happens. So in the way I deal with myself in my internal world, it's about survival. So I become pushy, bossy, controlling. I lie sometimes. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I do. I am in a position of I know. I hoard whatever I have. I don't share, right? And I focus on weakness. And then when I see weakness in others, I actually focus on their weakness and make them even weaker. So the way I relate to myself, I relate to friends and family, will be determined from this survival. I have to compete, and I have to, and every single aspect of our lives actually has a different value system. Does anybody have the experience of that? Is your value system, your values, the same when you deal with yourself as they are when you deal with loved ones? Are your value systems the same when you deal with loved ones as they are with strangers? Are you as loving with a stranger? Anyone?
Yeah, not every time, but sometimes.
Yeah, it's conditional, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So the difference between body consciousness and another consciousness, which we'll be speaking about and focusing on, is that value systems in this particular conscious state are not universal. They're conditional. So my value towards myself is going to be one thing, and how I act with my family will depend on whether they give me the love, attention, agreement, and the same thing with everyone else, actually. there's conditions for me to actually give my best to others and to the world. I'm having expectations of the world and of other things. So I have to receive something in order to give. So think about that. Our words, so most of us, how many of you actually pay attention to the words you use? Really pay attention. Anyone?
Earlier we didn't come to the Gyan. That time we didn't think about the words. But when come to the Gyan, then like 60%, 70% aware of the words, that whatever we are speaking or thinking about the word may maybe have bad impact.
Yeah, the words are so important because they initiate worlds. They literally cause things to materialize, to become real. So whenever we use a word, we think that it has no power, but in fact, it starts to create reality for us internally and externally. So if we constantly are saying, I'm worried, I'm fearful, if you keep repeating that to yourself, that will create a certain world and experience. I must survive. How many of you have ever experienced having a negative thought about yourself? Anyone? Never?
Yes.
Yes, most of us
Sometimes.
do at some point,
Yeah.
right?
Right? Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. So it sometimes even comes easier for us to actually speak negatively about ourselves than it is for us to speak negatively about others. We're kind of, sometimes our relationship with ourselves is one of, we're expendable. So changing that, we're going to work on that. So consciousness determines our reality. So words become important, thoughts become important. So we're going to explore what these types of worlds, how we can shift our relationship to the words so that we can experience something completely different. So this is body consciousness. And what we are experiencing at the moment in the world is due to this type of I must survive. If we look at the relationship that we created with the planet and its resources, it's being depleted, right? Because we are hoarding, we're taking as much as possible, and we're not inventing, we're not creating ways of producing, manufacturing. We're consuming so much. So where's our consciousness in this, right? So our relationship to nature and the outer world becomes destructive. Even our relationship at work, I work to survive, to pay my bills. So let's keep those things in mind, because so you can stay there, right? The option is to stay in where we've been practicing to be, but then there's a new commitment, reconstructing ourselves, to reconstruct, to remember. And this process actually, if you commit to it, is really easy because it's natural. So soul consciousness is, soul is centric. Soul is at the center. Its nature, the soul's nature is at the center of my behavior, of my thinking, of my feeling, and my being. The nature of the soul at the center, I have, I give. So it becomes natural. You know that you have everything that you want, that you need, actually. Not that you want necessarily, but that you need. So the shift from wanting to I have everything I need always. Can anybody tell me a moment in your life when you were facing obstacles where you didn't have what you wanted, and tell me that moment if what you needed didn't come? Anyone? Did you understand what I said?
I can't understand.
Okay, so basically I'm saying, has there been a moment where you wanted something, right? You wanted something, but you didn't quite get what you wanted, but instead you got what you needed.
Mm-hmm.
During our entire life, we've been experiencing this actually, but we haven't noticed that.
Oh,
Because,
yeah.
right?
I have an example.
Yeah, okay, give me your example.
Well, for example, when I moved from Texas to LA,
Okay.
I remember that I had put in prayer for just God to please open up the door of the job that was meant for me, that was good for me, that was good for my health.
Yeah.
And I applied for about 200 jobs, all sorts of things, office works, because I used to work in the corporate office, so I had office experience, and I applied all sorts of jobs. I mean, I wasn't picky. I was really knocking on doors and applying for all sorts of things, office jobs, retail, everything. And then I got a call on my birthday if I wanted to work for Disneyland.
Uh-huh.
And I did not know that it would come in the form of being actually inside the parks. And so it wasn't what I wanted initially. I didn't know that, but it's definitely what I needed. And I'm just very pleased with the result. So I do understand what you're saying. When you get what you need instead of what you want, you actually feel a lot of satisfaction. And sometimes you don't know it, but if you just trust that that is what's meant for you, then somehow it just, there's a lot of gratification in it.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so basically we focus so much on our desire. Our focus is so much on our desire and what we think is right for us that we get in the way sometimes of what is good for us. We slow that process down because we, instead of saying, I trust myself and I trust God and I trust the process of the drama, as we call it, for those who are familiar, the drama is basically life, this process of living in this physical body. So I trust the drama. And because I trust, I know I shall receive according to my karma. And karma, even though sometimes it is difficult or challenging, it's actually beautiful because actually the challenge is just to open you up in the direction and in the way that you need to be opened. So it's never ever, ever a challenge which actually is meant to weaken you or to disempower you. It's always, 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 that's the law. It's always, always actually beneficial. So it's up to us to see with the right eyes, to listen with the right ears, and to process it and relate to it in the right way. And soul consciousness, being in the consciousness that I, the soul, first of all, I am peace. And from I am peace, I am love. Not I have, but the remembering is that these qualities, these energies are actually part of me. I am peace. I am love. I am purity. I am spiritual power. I am bliss. It's a big difference from the body conscious space. And because we are remembering what's already inside of us, we then have this sense of fullness. So that's why I have, I give. So my life is a cooperation to energize the world with my natural virtues. That's the belief system that we're operating in. My life is a cooperation to energize the world with my natural virtues. So my relationship with the self becomes, I am peace, I am love, I am purity, I am spiritual power. I am bliss. I am a child of divine force, right? So what power in the drama can go against this combination of remembering, of empowerment? I, the soul, is connected to the divine. I understand the drama and the laws of karma. Therefore, why would I fear? Why would I worry? I am an eternal being. I will never die. So death actually becomes something completely different, right? The body finishes, but I continue. I go on to the next life. So relationships with those words that we played around with initially begin to shift. So words have the power to create worlds. I am impeccable with my word. So in soul consciousness, we become impeccable. Does anybody understand what that means? Impeccable.
No, what does it mean?
Yeah, impeccable means that there is no impurity. There's no dirt in it. There's no lie. There's no falsehood. It's
Perfect.
a pure, honest space. So my word is not only clean, but it's also elevated. It comes from spiritual knowledge and it reflects spiritual knowledge. And most importantly, it's rooted in peace, love, purity, spiritual power, and bliss. And any of the other virtues that come from I am peace. So consciousness creates reality. My thinking, my feeling, my being collectively creates my reality. So if you've been practicing soul consciousness, how often are you feeling full? How often are you feeling in trust, not only of yourself, but at your relationships and the world at large? Also remember that you've been given the capacity to come into this world, to come into this particular body for particular lessons. You didn't come here for destruction, in the sense of you came here to learn, not to be destroyed or to be weakened. Do you understand that? That's part of the letting go. Can you remember that you actually came here to learn and to experience yourself through this physical body, using the body's organs in order to express yourself and to take in and then create outwardly?
I can understand this, but I don't remember. I think I forgot everything before.
Yeah. It's very easy to forget, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's very easy to forget for all of us. We're all in the same. The thing to keep in mind is that we're all in the same boat.
Yeah.
Right? We're all in the same boat. We're all constantly doing our best. The thing to keep in mind is never beat yourself up. If you forget something, you then notice it, look at it, make the correction, move on. Don't get too caught up with the obstacle, with what you didn't do. But do get absolutely, with intention, focus and making the correction and then moving on. It's about our commitment to becoming different, to be different, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's also this wonderful aspect of soul consciousness where it's not about becoming. It's in a second, you just decide to be. So it's not about becoming something, it's about being. I am peace. Because ideas, words, literally shift a switch in our consciousness. It's an on and off switch. I'm either in the consciousness of body or I'm in the consciousness of soul. And when I'm in the consciousness of soul, I need to understand the mechanics of how that works. So soul consciousness means to come to terms with all aspects of the self, the body, the sense organs of the body system, the soul, which runs the body. So the soul has the body, and then this combination then connects to divine. So the effort of the soul consciousness is to use mind power to become neutral in the face of all the good and bad that arises within the soul. Soul consciousness means to become still and melt the effect of negativity, the weight that presses down upon the mind as a dark shadow of ill feelings, by maintaining a focus on the soul's original eternal condition of purity, peace, power, love, and bliss. So it is not natural to feel worries. It is not natural to fear fear. It is not natural to fear anger. So spiritual depletion occurs when the soul has acted against itself repeatedly. So each time that I have a thought that's about fear, as opposed to I trust myself, I trust the divine, I trust karma, and I trust the cycle, then when I consistently act against my purity, my peace, my power, my love, and my bliss, guess what happens? The whole system begins to erode. So that's why words, when I am meditating, when I am in silence, what am I meditating on? Am I allowing negative memories, negative thoughts to arise? And am I aware and in attention to put a stop to them immediately when I see them? And I see them and then actually look at them, face them, transform them. Right? It's not about running away from difficulties. It's about saying, okay, I have creativity. So how am I going to survive this moment? You know what? I'm going to be really resourceful. I'm going to start making phone calls. I'm going to start preparing whatever documents I need to prepare in order to plan for tomorrow. I need to, instead of waiting and focusing on worrying, I am going to be active about creating solutions. I am a soul. Solution-based thinking becomes a natural space. Does everybody believe that?
Yes.
How many of you are practicing it? How many of you are remembering it? How many of you are being it, right? So it's about us being accountable. So life is, the process that we are experiencing right now is not against us. It's actually here just to remind us. It's trying to push us to really be connected to what we are remembering, what we are supposed to be remembering. And then what we're supposed to be being. Not becoming, because it's not time to become, it's time to be. There is no time. Right? And if we procrastinate being, then we become susceptible to excuses. So keep that in mind. So what is natural soul being? Natural soul being is to understand the different parts of my being, right? Self-awareness. We become mechanics of our system. So there's two main components of the system. One is the eternal part, one is the temporal, the temporary part. The one that I, the soul, take on for a certain period of time, and then when it's time, it's discarded. I go on and I put on a new one. So eternal light energy. So light energy has certain capacities, certain powers, certain ability. It works a certain way. It has a whole system within it, a process. And part of the internal resources of the soul are virtues. Those nobody can take them away. They travel with you for eternity. And they're always there, ready to be your resources if you connect, if you remember. Purity, peace, power, love, and bliss. And the system is not a weak system. It's super powerful and resilient. That's why when you connect to soul energy, the light energy, you heal faster. You can cause the body to actually become an optimal machine. People who are in sports and competitive sports know that, but they think it's the brain. They haven't yet gotten to the connection of the soul. And but now science is actually making it clear that the soul, it's all the different studies in biology, neuroscience, quantum physics, they're pointing to the fact, wow, there's something that is outside of the body that's sending the signals, causing communication, that's causing the movement of the body. So this is a very, very special time. So time to remember. What are we remembering? I am light energy, eternal. I am a soul whose internal resources are virtues. Purity, peace, power, love, and bliss. And all the other virtues that come from these. I am resilient. And when I connect to divine force, I am unstoppable, for I become an instrument. This temporal body, organic matter, has a particular time. It assists me in expressing myself. I use the sense organs to take in information from the outer world, to process it, and then create a relationship with the outer world as I create understanding. It's very much like active listening. So the integrated self. So we must understand that what is an integrated self. The integrated self is basically the light energy, the organic matter, working together in harmony because we're remembering of who we are. I am a soul who has a physical body, and I use it to instrument action, to instrument my feelings, right? So I am creating. I'm a creator. Any questions about this? Any confusions?
Just now you mentioned connect. Just now you mentioned we need to connect with the divine force. How to connect with the divine force?
Yeah, this is another part of this series that is very specific, and it's through meditation. But actually, meditation becomes something very different in soul consciousness. It's actually, like I said before, switching the switch from assuring that you're in remembrance of I, the soul. When you actually are in the state of soul consciousness, the soul, remembering I am a soul, and you actually are in that being, what happens is you have an automatic connection. So you can be walking, you can be reading, you can be in action, but you can still create that. So that's what soul consciousness, this particular practice, is really about. Creating the consciousness, the right consciousness, in order for you to operate as a soul, not only here in the physical body, but also in the different dimensions, and connecting to the divine. So it's really about how I see myself, where is my attention, and how am I using my attention in order to activate my own internal powers in order to create relationship with divine, with myself, and then the world. Does that make sense?
Yes, It's amazing.
Yeah, it's God's gift. This information is God's gift to all of us because it comes at a particular time where we are called to remember and called to return. So the ecosystem, so again, so one is speaking of the different energies. One is matter, one is light. Now this is how it processes. So the soul has a particular process. It has different mechanics. So these are just basics, okay? So mechanics of soul being. The soul has no gender. The soul uses the body and its sense organs to express itself in the physical dimension. The brain does not think. Thought waves originate from the soul's conscious mind and flow into the brain to ignite the neural pathways responsible for bodily function, expression, and healing. The body has a gender. And that a lot of times also becomes very confusing. How does the body operate? What are the parts of the body as opposed to what is the function of the soul? So the function of the soul is quite easy to remember. And once we master it, we can then very easily clean up our act. So I, the soul, am the personality. As a collective, I am a conscious mind that creates thoughts, emotions, desires. I have a part of me. I, the soul, have an intellect that helps me discern, decide, judge, based on spiritual knowledge, based on what I have told my intellect. This is who I am. And based on who I've told my intellect, this is who I am, it will either become clear, crystal clear, and be able to discern things, make quick decisions in a second, or if I've given it mixed value systems, then it's going to be confused and not know sometimes, get confused. What do I do now? So it's our responsibility to fill our intellect, to fill ourselves with knowledge that actually creates clarity. So soul consciousness, Raja Yoga, functions with knowledge. It uses knowledge to activate the functionality of the soul and to also connect to the pure aspects of the soul by taking out the waste from the system. So I, the soul, have a conscious mind who creates thoughts, and I have an intellect which helps me decide this is good, this is not good, false or true. And once I create a thought and I create my choice as to how I'm going to act, I'm going to then send a message to the brain, which then causes the motion and the expression through my senses. Whatever action, thoughts, feelings that I'm expressing will then be stored in the subconscious mind, where I, the soul, store memories, impressions, instincts, habits, or sometimes called sanskars. So I, the soul, am made out of a conscious mind, an intellect, and subconscious mind. This is what we refer to as consciousness. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so there's different ways of looking at the same, but it's the different modalities of the expression. One is what kind of energy is it? What kind of form is it? And the other one is what is the process? So we're looking at the process now. So in terms of worrying, in terms of creating a perspective in yourself that you are powerful enough to come up with creative solutions and create resources for your life here, as you always have been able to. There hasn't been one moment until the present moment where your body has not had the power to defend itself from bacteria, viruses, illnesses of all kinds, infections. Because if you're responsible with your system will also work for you. And karma is always you giving you exactly what you are giving it. So one of the things that that will be helpful in terms of keeping this in mind, in terms of this process, is when I am in the world, remember, I, the soul, am seeing. So how I intake, it becomes very important. So it's not just an act of seeing, it's an act of seeing with a certain quality. So I see with peace. I am peace, seeing, watching the world, watching the action that's coming in. I, peace, am listening, because I am peace, right? Or I am love, listening. Or I am joy, feeling it. When we take in information, so part of the process of how this system works is the only thing, one of the few things that's in our control in the world. What's in our control, because there's many things that are out of our control. Death is one of them, right? Illness is another. Karma is in our control, because we know that whatever I give, I shall receive. So making sure that that karma stays clean, that the way I am seeing, the way I'm listening, that's why it's important for us to practice, to learn more about different listening skills, so that there's less mistakes, less misunderstandings. So I take in the world, I, purity, take in the world. I, purity, am seeing. I'm taking in what I see. I, purity, am hearing. I, purity, am feeling. And inside of me, I, the soul, am processing this information. I create a form, I create meaning, I create a story. I, the soul, am the creator that creates understanding, wisdom, knowledge from knowledge. So I process what I take in from the world, I process it, and then after I've made my story about it, my understanding about it, I respond. So the difference between how you take something in, if you take in something in through anger, you're more likely going to react. But if you take in something in through the process of I, the soul, you will always respond. It's just an automatic thing that happens. Peace does not know anger. Purity does not know sorrow. It does not know worry. Love does not know hatred. So the way I then communicate what I heard and how I took something in, and then the way I processed it through my consciousness, through the process of the soul, then I then communicate it outwardly. And whatever it is that I do becomes my karma. The imprint of my karma in terms of my memory is a record of what I gave, of how I was. So keep those in mind. How I take in information will determine how I then create a story, and then how I then communicate, and then how it's going to be stored. Is it going to be a good memory, or is it going to be an uncomfortable memory that I have to return, that will keep coming back to me because it's not yet fixed? That lesson hasn't yet been fixed. And another important thing to keep in mind is never make assumptions. If you assume you heard correctly without actually making sure and checking in with whoever you're having a conversation, it's just a good way of making sure that you're on the same page, that you have understanding. Understanding occurred. That you understood the price, that you understood the deadlines, that you understood the condition, that you understood the relationship. So taking in things from a body conscious will give you a completely different experience. And when you take in things from soul conscious, it's, you know, as long as I've been practicing, and yes, it does take time to make this more natural. But the thing that I've noticed is that whenever you are fully connected to these resources, these internal resources that are always there, you always end up with a positive return. And unless there is some dirt, some weakness that's still connected to your action, it will always come back as something that you will have to fix. So keep that in mind. Is my taking in purely pure, or is it still have a little bit of dirt, a little bit of anger, a little bit of negative intention? How you filter the outer influences, events into your system, and how you process the event. So how am I processing this event? How am I processing what the media is telling me? How is that affecting my system? And why is it affecting my system? And am I putting faith on the story the media is telling me, that the government is telling me, that the experts are telling me? Or am I really listening to my body? Am I listening to I, the soul, who has been around for eternity, who has a certain intelligence, a certain capacity, a certain connection with divine, a certain power, a certain resilience, a certain creativity to create solutions no matter what the obstacle may be? Where am I? And each one of us, only each one of us has the power to answer that question for ourselves. Close your eyes to anyone else. Close your ears to the sounds of people's voices. Spend time in silence. And this little bit of knowledge that I've shared in terms of how the soul mechanizes, how it works, practice it for the next week until the next lesson. It's very simple. Assure that you are in the company of yourself, purity. That you are in the company of yourself, peace. That you are in the company of yourself, spiritual power. That you are in the company of yourself, pure love. That you are in the company of yourself, pure bliss. And that you are in the company of divine, just by you having that consciousness of I, the soul, am sitting here working through this physical body, that automatically connects you to divine, and start feeling that force, that power. So that kind of, I think that we are at the end of the class, and does anybody have a question? Or would anybody, if anybody has something that they're working through, an obstacle, that you are having a challenge, if you want to kind of work this through a little bit, using some of these ideas, and if you're brave enough to speak up, that would be absolutely okay. This is about creating and understanding a system that is applied to practical moments. Anyone?
Okay, may I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Okay, why the soul has no gender, but our body has gender?
Yeah, so the soul doesn't have gender because the soul doesn't reproduce, right?
So there's no newborn soul.
There's no newborn souls, and we'll get into that part of the paradigm of soul consciousness in a later part of the Monday sessions. So there is a finite quantity of souls, just in general, just to give you an answer. So there is a finite number of souls. The Creator created a number of souls, the children, and those children go through the process of reincarnation, take on bodies. And when they take on the bodies, part of the process is the relationship aspect as well, right? So they're different ages, and this is going ahead, but I'm just giving you a little heads up. So there's an aspect of cycle, there's an aspect, and the cycle explains why souls come in and when they come down to take on bodies. So there's a whole cosmology. Do you understand the word cosmology?
Not that clear.
Okay, so cosmology means a whole reality. So just like, do you believe in creation?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you believe in creation, this is going to be very easy. The story of creation, so in Raja Yoga, there's a slightly different story of creation. And also the relationship with God is different, and also the form of God. So in the story of creation, there's an aspect of God created us in his image, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that understanding is a little bit confused because God is not a physical body, right?
Yeah.
So the understanding from Raj Yoga is God is the soul just like us, so he's light energy, and he does not ever take a body for himself, and therefore he remains pure. So there's a different relationship, so the relationship with God changes in terms of this particular understanding of how the universe works. Cosmology is the understanding or the system in which we believe the universe works. Does that answer the question?
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. There'll be a lot of other clarifications. So again, remember, part of the exercise here is to allow yourself to expand. It's not about taking something away, because nothing will ever take away your thoughts that you've had, your feelings, or your experience. You're just allowing yourself to add to it. And when you sit in silence, you can basically decide what's good, what I keep, and what I discard. Okay? Any other questions? Then I'll close now with just a minute of silence. I like to just keep it in silence because I really trust people's experience and intelligence, and it's always just so refreshing to just be quiet. So we'll leave that with a minute of silence.